SCN3 is Southampton's eastern cycleway, providing a link for residents of Thornhill, Chessal and Bittern. This route was constructed over the course of a year, from February 2019 to February 2020, as part of a wider redesign of the A3024 Bittern Road, costing £5.8 million. The route primarily consists of a separated cycleway along a straight but very undulating road, although it does revert to a shared path along narrower sections. It's also by far the most technological piece of the Southampton cycle network, with cycle-specific junctions appearing at several points along the route. As one of the main arterial routes of the Southampton cycle network, it serves its purpose well up until Bittern Village. SCN3 runs parallel along Bittern Road for approximately 3 kilometres, from the city boundary at Windhover roundabout to Bittern Village shopping precinct. Beyond Bittern Village, the route merges with SCN4, taking in the back streets and quiet ways of Bittern before ending at Northam Bridge. Before I start, while Southampton City Council has done the majority of the route very well, it's disheartening to see that the route ends abruptly at Windhover roundabout with an end of route sign. Hopefully Hampshire County Council will be able to extend this route towards Bittern and Swanwick in future. We begin just outside the city boundary, just beyond Windhover roundabout, next to a new housing estate. Here there seems to be some gravel spilt across the path, though it's unclear as to whether we're in Eastleigh or Southampton City Council territory. Here we reach our first bit of new infrastructure, a diagonal cycle crossing across the junction of Bittern Road and Botley Road. For reasons that become clear in a moment, it wasn't appropriate to use this crossing today, but I wanted to use it for the sake of this video. Here we encounter an unexpected problem. The cycleway has been closed owing to engineering works taking place next to the High Point building. While pedestrians have been given a diversion, there is no such allocation for those on bicycles. The footway opposite has not been designated as a shared path, so people on bikes have two options here: join Bittern Road until the works end, or walk along the footpath. Given that this is one of Southampton City Council's flagship cycling routes, it's extremely disappointing that no alternative provision has been given for the duration of these works. I may be confident to use the road, but this will be a physical barrier to many other less confident riders. We rejoin the cycleway at Warburton Road, where we have a nice and wide two-way cycleway. We have a fence and a very large verge to separate us from the 40-mile-an-hour traffic along Bursledon Road. The route reverts to a shared path for a short while, presumably to stay within legal width limits and to ensure that these trees stay in place. While I'm not a fan of shared paths, as they tend to put pedestrians into direct conflict with bicycle riders, it does make sense to ensure that these trees are kept safe. The separated cycleway resumes again for the first downhill section, leading to the junction with Antelope Park. We have a brief shared path section by the bus stop. I find it a bit odd that this wasn't turned into a bus stop island, as there is enough room here. Finally we come to a stop at the cycle traffic light. Following on from the Antelope Park junction, we have our first big uphill. Having ridden from the other side of the city and along this route in the opposite direction to start the filming, I was already starting to feel a little bit tired. All I can say is that if you commute on this route day in, day out, you'll be a lot fitter in no time at all. Still, in the low gear, it was very much manageable. Once again we revert back to a shared path before we climb onto Carey Road, a quiet residential street. After a short stretch, we're back onto a shared path across Hinkler Road. The path narrows here. If traffic patterns change in future, then the left turn lane could be reclaimed for more space, but for now, we just take care before the cycleway reappears a short while later. At Upper Deacon Road, we have our next cycle traffic light before we begin our final climb. The cycleway disappears for good at the top of the hill and becomes a shared path for the remainder of the journey between here and Bittern Village. The route does seem a bit narrow, which may cause conflicts with pedestrians, but again we have several older trees which prevent the option of a dedicated lane. Approaching White's Road, we have 4 crossings to navigate, of which only 2 are light controlled. Interestingly, coming from Bittern Village, we have a cycle specific traffic light that takes us directly across the junction, so it's a bit confusing as to why we don't have the same measure coming the other way. Approaching Bittern Village, we have a conflict of signs. On the left we have a no cycling sign, yet on the right we have route branded cycle direction signs for SCN3. I decided to dismount for a few metres and then remount after the tactile paving, but it's a bit confusing as to what I should be doing here. After traversing the rear of the shopping centre, the route turns into SCN4. Despite a few quirks, I thought that SCN3 was a reasonably thought out route that carried the right intentions, even if it wasn't executed perfectly. However, this eastern section of SCN4 leaves a lot to be desired for reasons that will become apparent shortly. Angel Crescent has been widened into a shared path, with pedestrian and cycle priority over vehicles. We turn onto Pear Tree Avenue and towards a newly upgraded Toucan crossing. The pavement has also been widened on the opposite side into a shared path. Here we have my first and possibly biggest criticism about this part of SCN4. On Chessal Avenue, we are dumped onto the road via a cyclist rejoin carriageway sign into what becomes a narrow lane with parked cars on both sides. The danger of this road is made clear just moments later when a car overtakes me very closely. The key measure as to whether a cycle network is successful is if a child can safely navigate it independently. The answer for this section is a resounding no, and will absolutely need some traffic calming measures or an alternative route in the future. Considering the aim here is to reach Northam Bridge, this is also a very indirect route compared with Bittern Road West. With cars parked half on the footway, this can also present difficulties for wheelchair users or those pushing buggies. I may be coasting downhill here, but for anyone coming in the other direction, this will be a very anxious climb when in close proximity to moving cars, and will do absolutely nothing to help riders who are less confident. The next direction sign isn't too hard to miss, but then we're presented with a cyclist dismount sign, something which should never ever be part of a modern cycling route. Either the path needs to be designated as shared use with the barriers removed, or an alternative route needs to be found, as this is frankly unacceptable and unfair on those who may find it easier to cycle than to walk. This is also a physical barrier, preventing those on tricycles or cargo bikes from using this route. The ramp leading up to the bridge on the other side is marked as a shared path, but there is no such sign heading west stating when it's safe to remount. Likewise, there didn't appear to be a cyclist dismount sign heading the other way, so this signage is conflicting. After the railway bridge, we have a shared path along Quayside Road for a short stretch, before we're again dumped onto a road, which soon becomes 30 miles an hour as we reach the industrial estate. Again, considering this could be a route to help children reach Bittern Manor Primary School, it feels very uninviting in places. As we arrive at Bittern Road West, we're directed onto the shared path, although we now also have the option of the temporary bus lane if we choose. This is the longest continuous stretch of designated cycleway on the Southampton cycle network, clocking in at just over 5 kilometres in total. However, it's also a route of two halves. SCN3 is a well-intentioned route with some well-executed sections and some sections which seem to be the victim of compromise, perhaps a result of the pre-COVID way of thinking within town planning departments. It still manages to be a direct route along a major corridor, linking several eastern areas of the city, and having cycle-specific junctions is very welcome. SCN4 is a different matter entirely. While designed to be a quiet way, it still places users in unnecessary danger and into direct conflict with other motorists. Unless someone rides along Chessal Avenue with the confidence to take the primary position, there's a very real danger that they could end up in the path of an opening door or a driver trying to squeeze past. Riding in the primary position when going uphill is also going to be a very big ask of anyone but the most confident of riders. Plotting a major cycling route along a section where riders are told to dismount is also an extremely puzzling decision. For some riders, this isn't even possible, particularly those who use hand cycles or tricycles. I would urge the council to either reroute this section or to remove those barriers and designate the route as a shared path, complete with a junction, similar to the cycle-only junction between Waterhouse Lane and Park Street in Shirley. So going forward from today's display of the best and worst of the Southampton cycle network, let's hope there's more of SCN3 in the future and less of SCN4.